asked me to talk a little bit about this post-COVID, still in the middle of COVID, Art Basel Miami 2021. I assume that's what is business of the art selling and buying has been for decades now. I don't think that changed much, but what is really new is this push for new markets. NFT became the most talked about new word of this year, and at the same time there is a parallel sense of what is forming now in the world of art as a new alternative marketplace that exists. Don't ask me where, in blockchain, in special kind of formats of transmission between the cryptocurrency as a token of exchange, and some of them are promoted. They're promoted by their new NFT galleries, but also, you know, the blue chip galleries are trying to be leaders. Pace Gallery has their, from what I understand and read, you know, the art moving to metaverse. I don't know how will that look like, but in design district of Miami, I guess metaverse already has been embodied in real architecture, and that's kind of disconcerting. We are still in the land of Baudrillard's simulation that has been established for decades now. I don't see any changes, but I think that you asked me what is beautiful. Artists making new works while they were in isolation, turning to their strong sense of desire to create and believe that art is eternal. The big collectors who opened their private collections and showed what had then been collected, and you know, you can imagine that everybody talks about equity and art in relation to social justice and representation of people who did not get to be represented, and I think that's fine and that's fair, and there is a preponderance of art dedicated to identity at this fair as well. But what I would like to see is art being open to not only artists who place their interest and on an identity, but artists that are free to do whatever they want to do. And again, it's about, you know, tastes, about cultivating tastes, it's about status, it's about talked about art. So that was the kind of main impression at the main fair, this kind of domination of desire to kind of leave impression quickly, to dazzle. As always, I would say, I don't know what did we learn, what is new, but definitely, you know, shiny objects that are highly produced and sleekly produced. That's what I noticed, and I enjoyed very much going to see collections such as Margulies' collection and Arte Povera, and this art that exists and hopefully will continue to exist. It was such a sobering and beautiful reminder that some trends are not passing quickly. That's what I wanted to kind of to single out, you know, not like, oh, we have to look back at classical art, but there is a way to make art that is not only trendy.
Hello, I am Mauro Herlitzka from the Galeria Herlitzka Faria from Buenos Aires and New York. We are here in Untitled Art Fair. We're delighted to be here. Wonderful week with a lot of sales. And we present on the spotlight, on a special project, Alvaro Gomez Campuzano from Bogota, Colombia. Alvaro born in the mid-50s, and now he's here. He studied architecture and landscaping, and then afterwards he did ceramics. But his main work that he is fully recorded, and he should talk about this, is about the pieces we show here, about as he's a pioneer of the textile art in the Americas. And what we see here and we're showing here, please, Alvaro, can you tell us how you start with a textile production?
Well, really, from the initial of my career, I've been very interested in the weaving techniques. And South America, it has such an ancestral point of view with all the cultures. It was one of my first points of departure. When I began to study architecture, and I just arrived from New York, I was aware that the spaces were going to be transformed, were going to be with multiple uses, that the textiles had that three-dimensional works, that they not only were close to the wall, bi-dimensional, but that the space and that the structures will be the beginning of a new technique.
The textiles, Latin America has on the pre-Columbian tradition, and you can find fantastic archaeological collections in museums and institutions about the textile. And you work with cotton, with polypropylene sometimes, wool, and the tradition of Latin American indigenous tradition, how it influenced you or how it crossed with your work.
Well, I went to Machu Picchu, I went to Tierra Adentro, I traveled to several communities where I tried to investigate how they dyed, how the painting and the cottons. And these works, they are all hand painted with the natural dyes.
About writing and expression, another sense of not only the expression of the textile, but also what kind of reading you can do on your own work. What do you express in these works we can see here?
Thank you very much. Well, really, I'm very interested in the counting systems of the Mesoamerican cultures. For example, the Mexican, they have the points and lines that it's the beginning of the code cards, of the perforated code cards. So I got that influence and I did that parallel. It was amazing for me that 4,000 years ago already the Mayas with point and lines settled that binarian image, and it was the beginning of our contemporary code cards. Another very interesting point of view was the Peruvians, that they made the quipus, that it was the noting system before writing and before scriptures. With the quipus, the culture kept their mathematics.
This is the work of Claudia Pena Salinas, and it is referencing Aztec mythology and the Aztec goddess of water. And the theme here is relating to gender and a lot of female iconography, abstracted. It's evocative work, and I believe she started this series when she was after she had been in Japan and studying the paper architecture in Japan with the doors and that beautiful open structure. So here she's using plexiglass and thread, so really referencing the craft of the Aztecs and the Mexican culture. And one thing that I admire so much about Salinas is the way she patterns color. This is really unusual, and it's also it seems kind of female, that she's working with colors not from their conceptual point of view, but the way they're working as hues playing off sort of musically in a pattern. So This piece is the signature piece, I would say, and it's in these, again, very muted blues and with surprising neons. And she's making her own geometry here, and it's really open. And then we have, you can see the frames vibrating from the cables, and then that gives us another sense of space. So we're really feeling an installation here that is working on a lot of different levels. This is an evocative world that we could look at for a long time.
So here you're looking at the work of Marlo Barrios. He's a Guatemalan contemporary artist, actually the master of contemporary from Guatemala. His series is called Mimicry, so it talks about three important eras: the pre-Hispanic, the colonial, and the global contemporary. So you're gonna see a lot of Latin American indigenous influences intertwined with North American and Asia. So there's gonna be a lot of characters and figures that the artist is creating in his own imaginary. This is watercolor and ink on paper, and this is acrylic and ink on paper.
For indigenous person today on this land, this is almost like an afterlife. And so I think that you get a lot of that quality through this work and through much of his work.
Thank you.
"22 or 23 December's gone, and I remember you clearly. I remember you now. And I love you still. You've got the road, and I've got the road. And we'll meet in Yakima prairies once we've walked through our stories and slowly ease away from our speed and our dread that hurry our hearts and exhaust our bones and our ancestors. They're not our ancestors, though. They're our mothers and our fathers sitting quietly alone as we watch them make sense of their youth. They're clouds to us now, just hues of light and recollections of feeling and emotion. We imagine the colors were their dreams, churning away in their memories. Mnemonics of shape and reason on syncope and swaying as the anxieties of the gods sit heavy in the past. And they say, such are things and dreams in autumn.
We are here in Galeria Gallery, and here we have the work of James Turrel. He's an artist who works with the effect of light, and he's always thinking about the spiritual connection between us as persons and the world. And I think it's very interesting how he works with the lights changing, as you can see it, because this is kind of a different pace. It puts our mind in another pace, in another thinking that is more ethereal.
I am William Isbell with Sicardi Gallery out of Houston, Texas. So we specialize in Latin American artists. And our roster is split in two. So half of our roster is composed of 20th century masters of Latin American art, primarily post-1920s. The other half of our roster is contemporary Latin American artists. So here at Basel, Miami Beach, we're featuring our masters roster. And so behind me you can see three of our master artists. So this is Mercedes Pardo out of Venezuela. Mercedes was married to Alejandro Otero, who's one of Venezuela's most famous artists. And so she was a little overlooked in her lifetime, but now we have this incredible work called Blue Moon. And what Mercedes did exquisitely well was she was able to play with colors in a very unique way, and so you can see there are sections on the side where the blues almost blend together, and there's this subtle teasing how she pulls them apart, and then the angularity of the planes and the shapes and just tilting something by 1 or 2 degrees just warps the perspective of the work. Behind me we have Fanny Sanin out of Colombia. This is from a small series that she did only about 3.5, 4 years. It was a transitional series. So in the 60s, she was working very with a lot of curvilinear form, much more free. And then she started doing the Striper series. And so the Striper series consists of these stripes, and later in the series, they start to break apart. You start to see these little horizontal inclusions in the work. Those got more and more, and then further fractured the plane until she had established this bilateral symmetry by 1974, which continues in her work today. The sculpture here is a piece by Francisco Sabrino. He was a Spanish artist, but was very influential in the Parisian scene with Julio Lepar. They formed the Grave movement. And both of them, so Sabrino he worked, like half of his work is this grayscale metal scale, the other half is this hypersaturated color. So of course this is from the metallic. And this is from a series that he was doing that was almost virtual reality, but virtual reality is conceived in the 60s, which is when this was designed. And you can see when you get closer that it fractures the planes as you shift to the side. Straight images and mirrors start to fracture apart. And it's just a really beautiful example of the artist's work.
Hi, I'm Jennifer from Eric Firestone Gallery, and this is a painting from 1978 by the artist Joe Overstreet. It is from his Fibonacci series. He was a really experimental artist. He loved to experiment with how paint could go onto the canvas and what could be the support for a painting. And this painting was made by pouring acrylic paint onto plastic, and then after it dried, cutting the actual paint into strips, which were then applied to the canvas. So we're seeing these strips of canvas of paint on this canvas. And he also loved to combine chance and spontaneity with order. And so there's the pouring that's counteracted by these rhythms of these strips, the widths of these strips of paint that are applied. And we can also see on top of that he's painting on top of it. There's also always an element of optimism and joy in his work. He definitely was referring to the tragic parts of African American history, but also the capacity for optimism and joy. And I feel like this painting with its color really speaks to that.
Hi, we're at Untitled Art Fair in Johansson Projects, and we're going to look at this gorgeous Blaise Rosenthal painting. And just quickly on the process, the artist starts with canvases and puts a base covering on them, and that's really important because everything shows through. And then he uses these washes, very specific color and very spare, and then wipes away this, and then he puts lots and lots of pencil lines in here overlaying the surface. That's why you get these canvases being so rich and visually compelling and something you could look at for a long time. And I think the best way to talk about this work is to read the artist's statement. The first home I ever remember was on the edge of nowhere, at the edge of a dirt road in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada. I spent my formative years. the elemental character of this environment and its aesthetic vocabulary became archetypal for me. Earth, wind, fire, and wind in all local forms. Seasons, dusty bare feet, and no shirt through the dry heat.
Hi, my name is Martín Pelenur. I'm an artist and director of an artist-run gallery called La Pecera, based in Punta del Este, Uruguay. We are showcasing our work in Untitled. The work is Candelavado, a young sculptor who works mostly figurative feet and hands and tiles. Uzi Sabah is a filmmaker doing analog and found footage and some prints. And my work, Martín Pelenur, I work with mostly masking tapes, and you can see here some details that refer to the grid, the orthogonal, the vertical, the horizontal.
Hi, this is Gallery MPA at Untitled Art Fair, and we are looking at the magical work of Juan Uslay. So we look at this painting over here, and what Juan Uslay does is he takes a brush or a sponge and he does a stroke, and then he takes a break, and a stroke and takes a break, and it's actually related to his heartbeat. And it's the accident of the paint. So when the paint gets less, on the brush, it gets more faded. And then so he lets a lot of the chance elements happen, and then you have these beautiful vibrations. They look like they're underwater or something. And then here you have three different styles of these lines, and they're all sensitive with the air, which adds the emotion. I mean, this is like the breathing of, a living organism. So here's an example of quite a spare Uslay work, and he started here with a wash, and then he does his same, step by step, take a small span of the brush and then stop, small span. So he doesn't paint the stripes, he's painting the spaces in between the stripes as brushes, leaving all the evocative era. It's very nebulous. I love this one. It's so open and ethereal. And then he's also always inventing color, so he's using some aspect that doesn't make sense. Okay, and then this painting is a newish methodology that Uslay is experimenting with now. And so, again, it's always the bands, it's always this beautiful sort of, it's like landscape of the mind. And so to sort of break it up, he's using this garish pink and then finding the triangles up here, covering it over, and just mixing up different styles. It seems to me that this is probably an interim piece, working into some, new ways of Juan Uslay meditation.
Hello and welcome to our booth at Untitled Art Fair. This is Patrick Heide, Contemporary Art, and I'm going to present to you one of our artists. It's Sophie Bouvier-Auslander, who is from Switzerland. She was born in 1970 and now lives and works in Lausanne. She's often been in London because she studied at Slade School of Art. She actually studied a doctorate looking at tangibility and surface structures, which actually is transposed a little into her artworks. As you can see, we have two pieces here. They're actually maps originally. So what she does, if you'd like to have a closer look, because it's not always so evident from afar, but when you look at a closer vantage point, these are actually maps. And so Sophie has painted over the top using a gouache paint, and she also puts a layer of wax as well. Once the paint has dried, she then scores into the surface of the paint using, she can see sometimes some quite sharp tools, or she pickles away at the paint herself to allow it to fall off from the surface, and then revealing the sort of hidden territory of the map behind. Here we have the darker blue reminding us sort of maybe something in the cosmos or some deep ocean. And then we have a whiter one here. Her colors, the color palette she uses are often very natural and relates to nature. You can see here that there's been a larger part of the paint that she's allowed to fall off, revealing that nice green part behind. These works talk a lot about fragility. I mean, even you can see literally in the bottom of the frame sometimes some of the paint still remains there, and often, you know, the map itself is very thin, and she's pinned, you know, parts of it to keep it together. And I think that says a lot about, you know, our existence in general. I think Sophie also likes to evoke those ideas of the fragility of time and our planet. She sees the planet as a sculpture, and these ideas are shown a lot through her work. They're almost like memento moris in a way when you look at them more deeply, perhaps. Yeah, so actually there's a lot more than meets the surface to Sophie's work, and I think you really need to see them in real to be able to experience them for yourself. So enjoy.
My name is Tim Hawkinson. I'm with Mark Strauss Gallery in New York City. We're happy to be here at Untitled, and we're presenting work by 7 artists. This piece is by Anne Samat, an artist from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. She grew up in Kuala Lumpur, and she studied in art school more traditional weaving. After a period of working as an artist, she started to transition into making these wall sculptures. And she does not consider it weaving, but it comes out of that idea in weaving where you assemble insignificant parts, the simple threads, and you make it into something grander than the sum of the parts. So she's assembling all of these kind of insignificant 99-cent store nothing objects. Like you can see the yard rakes, the toy swords are ubiquitous in Malaysia. Every kid plays with them growing up, but they're kind of a nothing object. You can see kitchen bowls. The circular piece in the center is a tin that houses mosquito candles that everyone in Kuala Lumpur has on their balcony. Various beads and keychains and toy soldiers. All of these things that are sort of, if you just saw them on their own, you wouldn't look twice. But assembled into this object, it sort of becomes like an altar or an avatar. So she's been showing widely in Asia for several years at museums there. We were very excited to meet her a few years ago and start to show her in the United States. We have a current solo show with her on view in New York at the moment. And coming up, she'll have a solo show at the University of Wyoming Art Museum next year, at Mass MoCA the year after that. Museum in Virginia will be doing a solo show. So very quickly we've gotten her work in front of interesting people and started to build momentum with her in the North America.